continues to fuel conflict, terror, and turmoil throughout the Middle East and beyond. Importantly, Iran is not living up to the spirit of the deal.
Tensions with Iran are rising.
The US has already come close to an attack. A third UK warship is heading to the Gulf, and Iran's uranium enrichment levels are up.
So, what's next for one of the most volatile regions in the history of the world? You might be hearing a lot about how both the UK and the United States aren't getting along too well with Tehran. But what's the reason behind the rising tensions?
The United States and Iran have a long-standing history of troubled relations, but the latest escalation started after the US accused Iran of attacking 2 Japanese oil tankers in the Gulf of Oman, where much of the world's oil is transported. And so the world watched on, as events between the two countries reached boiling point. President Donald Trump announced that he was just minutes away from an attack on Tehran in retaliation for shooting down an unmanned American surveillance drone.
And I think probably Iran made a mistake. I would imagine it was a general or somebody that made a mistake in shooting that drone down.
Days later, the US said it would send 1,000 more military troops to the Middle East because of hostile behaviour by Iranian forces. But Tehran has consistently denied the attack on the 2 oil tankers and said it wouldn't stick to the international agreements it made about its alleged nuclear ambitions any longer.
یک قدرت بزرگی که داره زورگویی میکنه خود در برابرش باید ایستاد از زورگویی دست برداره.
The deal saw years of negotiations between the countries finally put to bed.
Tehran agreed to cut its nuclear stockpile by 98% in return for the lifting of crippling international sanctions, meaning they could once again sell oil on international markets and use the global financial system for trade. But Donald Trump hated the deal and walked away from it in May 2018, and shortly after unleashed its toughest ever sanctions against the country.
The unlawful extraterritorial economic sanctions imposed on Iran by the United States in violation of Security Council Resolution 2231 represent the greatest threat to the achievement of sustainable development goals of Iran and many of our neighbors.
Part of why Trump abandoned the deal was because he didn't believe Iran were actually sticking to its agreements. In another development, Iran's Revolutionary Guard seized a foreign tanker and its 12 crew it says were smuggling fuel in the Gulf. The oil tanker was said to be travelling from the United Arab Emirates, but so far the UAE officials have denied it's theirs. And most recently, the US Navy destroyed an Iranian drone in the Strait of Hormuz, in what Trump says was an act of defence, after it came within 900 metres of the USS Boxer.
The United States reserves the right to defend our personnel, our facilities, and interests, and calls upon all nations to condemn Iran's attempts to disrupt freedom of navigation and global commerce.
But as Washington and Tehran were clashing, a new spat between the UK and Iran began to unfold.
British naval forces seized an Iranian supertanker off the coast of Gibraltar, known as Grace 1, after suspecting it of breaking EU sanctions by illegally shipping oil to Syria. However, Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, denies this and has threatened Britain with retaliation of what it calls the illegal seizure of the ship and its contents.
انشاءالله جمهوری اسلامی و عناصر مؤمن در جمهوری این کارها رو این قباست‌ها رو بی جواب نمیگذارن.
Now, the UK are sending a third warship to the region.
HMS Kent is bound for the Gulf sometime in mid-September to strengthen the Royal Navy's presence. Destroyer HMS Duncan is also headed to the region this week, on top of the permanently positioned HMS Montrose.
We are constantly monitoring the security and constantly keeping under review the kind of security that we need to keep British shipping safe.
Despite the fact that the Ministry of Defence claims sending another ship is not related to the current tensions, it's very unlikely that Tehran will see it that way.
But could there be any way for the UK and Iran to get back on the diplomatic path?
During the Sun's live debate with Jeremy Hunt and Boris Johnson, the two hopeful next PMs said that right now they wouldn't be supporting any military action against Tehran and are working to de-escalate tensions.
If you say that going to war with Iran now represents a sensible option for us in the West, I just don't believe it is.
Hunt also said that if a war was to break out, it would be an accidental one, and during his campaign promised to add more warships to Britain's fleet if he becomes PM.
People misunderstand the other one's motives, and so what we are working to do at the moment is to try and de-escalate as many of the tensions as we possibly can.
As the drama escalates on the high seas, the UK continues to edge closer into dangerous waters with Iran.
I also call on other nations to protect their ships as they go through the strait and to work with us in the future.
The US is pushing its closest ally to also ditch the nuclear deal, and with Iran pressing on with uranium enrichment regardless,
The next Prime Minister may have to calm Washington and deal with an increasingly volatile Tehran at the same time.